welcome to this special edition of Vantage. We are in Dubai counting down to COP28, the annual summit on climate action. Hours from now, thousands of delegates will descend on the city. Heads of state, royalty, religious leaders, activists, government officials, all of them will come together for crucial talks on climate change. I know it's not a glamorous summit, not like your NATO or G20, but this one is equally important, if not more. And that's the biggest challenge in covering climate change, getting people to listen, getting them to take the issue seriously. So tonight, we are trying something different. We showed you the destruction of climate change. Now see how it is affecting your wallet. That's right. Climate change shaved off 6.3% of global economic output last year. 6.3%. It's making countries and people poorer. Tonight we'll tell you how. Also, China is lashing out at Western attempts to de-risk their supply chains, which can only mean one thing: the strategy is working. And in Sri Lanka, the cricketing drama escalates. The sports minister has been sacked. It comes hours after he accused the president of plotting to assassinate him. All this and more lined up, but first, the headlines. India breathes a sigh of relief. Some of the 41 workers trapped in the Uttarakhand tunnel have been rescued. On November 12th, an under-construction tunnel collapsed, trapping the workers. Repeated setbacks have delayed the marathon's 17-day rescue operation. Iranian president, a no-show at the summit announced by his Turkish counterpart. Ibrahim Raisi skips the meet in Ankara. Recep Tayyip Erdogan had announced what was to be Raisi's first official trip to Turkey earlier this month, but Tehran never confirmed his participation. The Philippine government and communist rebels agreed to resume peace talks. This will begin next year, but the date and venue are yet to be finalized. The armed struggle was launched in 1969. It is one of the world's longest-running Maoist insurgencies. A Pakistan court orders Imran Khan's cipher case to be held inside jail in an open trial. This comes after jail authorities did not present Imran Khan in court, citing security risks. The former Pakistani Prime Minister is accused of disclosing a secret diplomatic cable. Big blow to Kenyan President William Ruto. A court strikes down his contentious housing tax, calling it discriminatory and irrational. The levy was signed into law in June to fund affordable housing. And France to ban smoking on beaches and public parks and near schools. Taxes on cigarettes will also be hiked. The Macron government wants to create the first tobacco-free generation by 2032. In a world full of wars, artificial intelligence and viral trends, there is one issue that never gets a seat at the cool kids' table: climate change. It's the party guest that everyone ignores, the dish that you pick last in a buffet. It just doesn't have the appeal. Or in some cases, people think it's just fake. But that does not change the fact that climate change is real and it's affecting everyone. You, me, the entire world. Of course, you've heard all of this before, but what if I told you that climate change is also affecting your finances? It's burning a hole in your pocket. Last year, climate change shaped billions of the world economy. This is according to a new report that has come out. It was released ahead of the COP28 Summit. And what does it say? In 2022, climate change cut 6.3% of the world's global economic output, 6.3%. So basically, the world is poorer by billions. And it's all because of climate change. As temperatures rise, so does the economic toll. However, the burden is not the same. Some countries are more affected than others. And in this case, it's the poorer nations. Take Africa, for example. It contributes to just 4% of global emissions, but the continent is the hardest hit. In 2022, 110 million people were affected by climate change. The total loss, $8.5 billion. And this will only get worse. By 2030, Africa could lose $10 to $20 billion every year due to climate change. Imagine what the continent could do with that kind of money. Invest in infrastructure and technology, ramp up health facilities. I could go on, but you get the point. Instead, Africa is losing that money to fighting climate change. A similar situation is unfolding in South Asia, one of the worst affected regions in the world, and every country here bears the brunt. Agriculture is the backbone of these economies, but floods and droughts are disrupting crop yields, and this leaves farmers in distress and nations grappling with food shortages. Then there are extreme temperatures. India has already sounded a warning. 4.5% of India's GDP could be at risk by 2030. This is due to lost labor hours. So without any action, South Asian economies could shrink. Take the collective economy of India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal, Pakistan and Bangladesh. If this trend continues, the total economy of South Asia could shrink by 1.8% by 2050. Australia too could face economic losses. Climate change could cut their GDP by $274 billion. And all these will be the worst hit nations. Now let's look at the ones that are faring better, ironically, due to climate change, like Europe. Climate change is making the continent of Europe warmer, and this has led to a near 5% gain in net GDP last year. But these gains are only short term. Warmer summers will soon be offset by colder winters, and then we'll be back to square one. There is an urgent need to address all of this. It was raised at the COP27 last year in Egypt. The solution was a damage and loss fund. Nations agreed to set up that fund. This money was to be used to help vulnerable countries, help them offset the economic loss of climate change. 1 year has passed since that summit in Egypt. We are just days away from COP28 here in Dubai, but the details of that fund are still blurry. There is no concrete setup. And that is likely to be a key point of negotiation at COP28. So long story short, the economic toll of climate change is not a distant spectre. It is happening as we speak. It is happening right now. Talks and discussions can only get us so far. What we need now is concrete action. Governments must focus on solutions like embracing renewable energy, sustainable practices, and building climate-resilient infrastructure, all of which needs money. Which is why climate financing should not just be another debate, it should be priority number one, and historical emitters must pay up for the damage they've done. This is not charity, it's the need of the hour. If world leaders were on TikTok, de-risk would be trending. It's the talk of the town, a geopolitical obsession aimed at the one and only China. Countries are trying to loosen the dragon's claws on global supply chains, trying to reduce their dependence on Chinese suppliers. It sounds moderate, almost surgical, a far cry from outright decoupling. But it has started biting China's prospects. Data released over the past month proves this. Manufacturing in China contracted in the month of October. Exports shrank by 6.4% in October compared to last year. While this was unexpected, it came on the heels of China's worst quarter, which obviously only made matters worse. I'm talking about the period of July to September this year. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, hit its first ever quarterly deficit in China, a deficit of $11.8 billion. And this was a historic low. It is bound to have long-term consequences for Beijing. which is also looking at a weakening yuan, decreased capital investments, clipped economic growth potential and worse unemployment. Remember, the unemployment rate in China is already at a record high. This is not good news for the world's second largest economy. But China has only itself to blame for all of this. Companies say China has become quote-unquote uninvestable with its anti-espionage law, the multiple raids, exit bans and slow regulatory approvals. So this past year, foreign investors have been moving away from Beijing. From electric vehicle batteries to pharmaceutical supplies, they've all been exploring alternatives, especially the pharma companies. For nearly 2 decades, China was their favorite, the preferred location for drug makers, be it for pharmaceutical research or manufacturing. And this was due to its low cost and speed. But now the West is asking its companies to de-risk their supply chains. And the same companies are icing Beijing out. And when one door closes in China, another opens in India. The Indian pharmaceutical industry is worth $42 billion. But now it is booming more than ever. Reports say it is benefiting from Beijing's pharma walkouts. Let me explain how. Western pharma companies outsource drug development to something called CDMOs. That's Contract Development and Manufacturing Organizations, CDMOs. These companies are based in countries like India and China. In India, the CDMO industry is worth $15.6 billion. In China, it's over $27 billion. But with de-risking, Indian CDMOs are seeing a boost. Some of them have seen sales grow by 25 to 30%. Revenues are expected to grow by over 11% annually. This is for the next 5 years. 11% growth in India. For China, the same projection is 9.6%. So Indian companies are projected to grow faster. And that's not all. Greenfield investments have also seen a drop. Now, what is a greenfield investment? It is where a parent company creates a subsidiary in a different country. American and European companies are moving away from China. Such investments have dropped by $20 billion compared to last year. Meanwhile, in India, greenfield investments have shot up by $65 billion between 2021 and 2022. That's an increase of 400%. So the shift is evident, and China is feeling the pinch. It is reacting almost like a jilted lover. Listen to this.
We are willing to work with all countries to build a closer industrial chain and supply chain partnership. We will deepen international cooperation in the industry chain and supply chain with practical actions. We will treat Chinese and foreign enterprises equally so as to provide more convenience and better protection for everyone to invest and do business.
It seems Beijing despises the China +1 strategy. For China, 3 is a crowd, but the West disagrees. And for a change, it is walking the talk, slowly but surely de-risking from China. Now let's turn our attention to Sri Lanka, where a power struggle is taking place. It involves corruption, assassination allegations and an attempted coup. We're talking about the wild world of Sri Lankan cricket. Yesterday saw another twist in that tale. Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe sacked his sports minister. His name is Roshan Ranasinghe. And he is the man behind the latest scandal to rock the island nation. So first, let's tell you about what led to this. The trigger would be the recently concluded Cricket World Cup. Sri Lanka had a dismal showing at the event. They were knocked out during the group stage, managing a measly 2 wins in 9 matches. It was just the excuse the sports minister had been waiting for. Reports say tensions had been building for over a year between the sports minister and the Sri Lankan Cricket Association. The minister regularly made charges. He said the board was misappropriating funds, but he never provided a smoking gun, so he could not act on his accusations. Until the 6th of November, the Sri Lankan team had been knocked out of the World Cup. The country was heartbroken, and the minister decided the iron was finally hot enough. So he exercised the nuclear option. He sacked the entire cricket board. Now you may be wondering, how was he allowed to do that? Isn't that political interference in sport? It definitely is. But Sri Lanka has a law that allows for this. Under this law, Sri Lanka's sports minister has the power to dissolve the governing body of any sport. And this law has been around for decades. It has been used in the past as well. So on the 6th of November this year, the sports minister used it again and he sacked the board, replacing them with an interim committee of his choosing. This committee had a legitimate face, former World Cup winning captain Arjuna Ranatunga. But some others on the same interim committee had no cricket administration experience. These were relatives of politicians, people who had previously worked in law and real estate, now tasked with managing Lankan cricket. So this new board's composition raised some eyebrows, as did the entire crackdown in general. The matter reached the courts, a stay order was issued, the board reshuffle was put on hold. So were the minister's actions legitimate? The courts are yet to decide. They're going to decide it in a few weeks. But the game was afoot. So each side made their play. The Sri Lankan Cricket Council reached out to the sports governing body, that's the ICC, the International Cricket Council. The ICC backed this board. They refused to recognize Sri Lanka's new politically appointed board. They even suspended the Lankans from the ICC. On what grounds? They say the sports minister had broken ICC rules and that political interference was not allowed. And that's not all. Sri Lanka was supposed to host the Under-19 World Cup next year. The ICC stripped it of the right to play host. Now, all these moves were meant to apply pressure on Lankan politicians, but the sports minister remained defiant. He insisted that no one had the power to stop him. Not the board, not the ICC, not even the president of Sri Lanka. The sports minister said that he needed no one's permission to remake the Cricket Association. And to counter the opposition in courts, he began a probe into the ousted board. He said they would have to abide by the findings of this investigation. Basically, he wanted to have his way. Now, while this power struggle was heating up, there were those with calmer heads trying to sort out the trouble. Like Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe last week, in an exclusive interview, he told Firstpost that he was taking a neutral approach.
I am waiting to see the outcome of the decision of the courts in regard to the interim committee. And once that is done, we'll have to start talking with the ICC to restore the, to ensure that Sri Lanka can host matches again. But I want to bring legislation which will take away the power of the minister to intervene and interfere in politics. That's been there from 1973. That has to change. And there's a new law, draft law, that's been prepared.
Wickremesinghe wanted to wait for the courts. He believed that the sports minister had too much power. He wanted to curb this power, but it seemed to be a long game. All that changed yesterday. I mentioned how the sports minister was defiant and how he challenged all those who opposed him. That was directed at President Wickremesinghe too. Yesterday, the sports minister said that his life was at risk. And he said it in Parliament, that if anything were to happen to him, the president was to blame. That was perhaps the last straw. Hours later, the minister was sacked, removed from all his portfolios with immediate effect. It seems the coup has been thwarted. Sri Lanka's cricket board breathed a sigh of relief, and the courts have postponed their hearing on the interim board. They want to know if the sacked minister's orders still stand. We'll find out on the 5th of December at the next hearing, but by the looks of it, calm is set to return to Sri Lankan cricket. Now let's turn towards Russia and their no-limits partnership with China, which is getting closer by the day. Business executives from Russia and China reportedly met last month. They held secret discussions. Do you know what was in the agenda? Crimea. These talks were not about trade or business deals, but something much deeper and strategic. The secret meeting was about an undersea tunnel, one that would connect Russia with Crimea. Quick primer. Crimea was historically part of Ukraine. That was until Moscow annexed it in 2014. For Putin, Crimea holds strategic value. It gives the Russian Navy access to warm waters. And Moscow will do everything to maintain sovereignty over the Crimean Peninsula. They've built ports and other infrastructure projects in Crimea. The latest plan is to build an undersea tunnel. But why are they doing this? It's quite simple. The Crimean Peninsula is connected to Russia by a bridge. The bridge is 19 kilometers long and crosses the Kerch Strait. It has two parallel components which support both road and rail traffic. It is the longest bridge constructed by Russia, and it's the lifeline for Crimea. But since the war began in Ukraine, Crimea's lifeline has been targeted multiple times. The most recent attack was in August. Every time the Crimea bridge is targeted, the peninsula is cut off from Russia. So Moscow has now learnt its lesson. Putin wants an alternative route into Crimea, and it seems that China wants to play a role in all of this. And here's where things get interesting. According to reports, the Ukrainian military intercepted emails. These were mails between Russian and Chinese business executives. One of the emails mentions a company called the CRCC, that's the Chinese Railway Construction Corporation. It's a state-owned enterprise. It is known for building some of the largest road and rail networks in China. And they want to expand their operations into Russia. The intercepted emails quote an official of this company. And listen to what they wrote. We are ready to ensure the construction of railway and road construction objects of any complexity in the Crimean region. So clearly China wants to work with Russia on large-scale infrastructure, but this will not be the first time this has happened. In 2021, the same company, CRCC, worked with Russia. They constructed 3 stations and 9 tunnels for Moscow's metro. So there is some history there. But this will be the first time that China will venture into Crimea, a region they have not endorsed as Russian territory. And this is a deviation from their previous stance. But coming back to the secret meeting for now. The CRCC represented China. But who were the Russian executives at this meeting? From the 9 people that were part of the closed-door talks, we know only 2 names. The first is Russian oligarch Vladimir Kalyuzny. He's listed as the consortium's leader. And the second is Georgy Muradov, the permanent representative of Crimea to Putin. The names of other members who attended the meeting were not disclosed. It's a new tactic that Russia has adopted to safeguard its oligarchs from Western sanctions. And China is towing that secrecy line. Look at the backdrop of these developments. The war between Russia and Ukraine is still ongoing. Ukraine's counteroffensive has faltered. But constructing a tunnel in Crimea during war is an ambitious move. First, it would be an easy target for Ukraine. Tunnels require large machines and manpower, and the work has to be carried out in the open, making the project vulnerable to attacks. Second, an undersea tunnel would cost billions of dollars. The construction of the Crimea bridge was over $3.5 billion. An undersea tunnel will cost Moscow a lot more. Maybe that's why they require Beijing to fund their ambitious plan. Because Putin wants to safeguard Crimea. The peninsula has symbolic significance for his presidency. A tunnel would give Russia more access to Crimea. But what will China gain out of all this? Beijing could provide loans for the project and get Russian oil and gas in return. China could also insist on partial ownership of the tunnel. The infamous debt trap, a tactic that China has used time and time again. The terms between Russia and China are still not clear, but one thing is certain. Putin wants to secure Crimea at all costs. On to the war between Israel and Hamas. The 4-day truce has been extended by 2 more days. America's top diplomat Antony Blinken will be in Israel again, his 3rd trip to West Asia in less than 2 months. So what will be on his agenda? A permanent ceasefire. You see, the Israel-Hamas war has been brutal. Thousands of lives we know have been lost, tens of thousands of people have been displaced, and then there is the economic cost of war. It has almost crippled the Israeli economy, not to mention Gaza. Conscription has taken thousands of people out of the workforce, businesses have shut down, and consumer demand is at an all-time low. Israel's central bank has pegged the war's cost at $53 billion. The war is costing Israel more than $250 million every day. This financial loss could have serious repercussions. Here's our report.
Israel's war on Hamas is taking a toll on its economy. The Bank of Israel has reduced the country's economic growth. As per reports, Israel's economy is shrinking. Its currency, the shekel, is at a 14-year low. At the same time, Israel's sovereign debt rating has been downgraded. The central bank has warned of serious fiscal ramifications. They have urged the government to implement a new budget. Let's understand the cost of Israel's war in numbers. The central bank has pegged the cost of war at almost $54 billion, which means that Israel is burning almost $270 million every day. The army has mobilized almost 360,000 troops. That's almost 8% of Israel's workforce. Along with this, Israel has expelled Palestinian workers since the war began. Palestinian and immigrant workers made up over 16% of Israel's workforce. The shortage of labor has forced businesses to shut down. Economists estimate that if the war carries on, it will cost Israel 10% of its GDP or gross domestic product. Despite the high economic cost of war, Israel says that once the hostages are released, the war against Hamas will continue.
Here is also the framework that says it is possible to free every additional day 10 more hostages. This is welcome. In the same breath, I also said to the President that at the end of the outline, we will return with full force to achieve our goals. That is the elimination of Hamas, ensuring that Gaza does return to what it was. And of course, the release of all our hostages.
If Israel continues with its military operation, it will become one of the highest military spenders in the world. Currently, Israel has spent almost $54 billion. They are now among the world's top military spending countries. Israel has spent more than the military budgets of France, South Korea and Japan. And they are on the path to surpass Germany if the fighting resumes. As of now, Israel and Hamas have extended their truce. The fighting has stopped. Israel has pulled back some military equipment from Gaza. Hamas has released some hostages. But the war has taken a toll on both sides.
التمديد لصالحنا وبرضه مطلب إسرائيلي يعني برضه اليهود يعني تعبت مش يعني تقول يعني هي الحرب بس علينا إحنا لا وهي عليها كمان.
Israelis are unsure about the ceasefire. They believe that the war will carry on.
I believe that we need to continue the cash fire. It's very complicated because we want to win this war. But first of all, we need to show the world that the hostage is the first, and we want peace and bring the children and the women home is the first things. And later we can continue the war.
If the fighting erupts again, Netanyahu will have to amend the national budget to save the economy. Otherwise, Israel could face one of its worst financial crises ever.
Now to Myanmar, where another war is brewing. On one side is the ruling military junta. On the other are various armed ethnic groups. They say they're fighting for democracy, for an end to the junta's dictatorship. No matter the motive, wars are costly. This one is too. But not just for the warring factions. Another party may also be feeling the pinch. The junta's puppet master, that is China. For weeks now, Beijing has been calling for peace. It has been sending top officials to Myanmar to hold talks. It has offered to mediate with the rebel factions, and now Beijing is flexing its military muscle. On Saturday, China launched combat training activities along its border with Myanmar. It released videos of the drills. You can see armored vehicles, artillery getting fired, and officers shouting orders at the troops. It is all meant to be very intimidating, I'm sure. China hasn't said how long these drills will last, nor has it mentioned how many soldiers are taking part. It said the aim was to check its readiness for emergencies, to see how it could, and I'm quoting, control and close borders. The message is simple. Myanmar's problems should not cross the border. And refugees may be a part of these problems. Reports say the fighting in Myanmar has displaced more than 330,000 people, 330,000 people. Many have crossed into China, and China seems to be now pushing back with the muscle flexing and with tear gas.
如果说飞机来，你们出来看看，来大家说你们一肯敢菜吗？现在你们站这里，你们躲了里边，你们也不敢菜吗？现在盖边，我们也在说，反正你们也不敢菜了。你们个小子，你们为什么要缅甸说赶快打仗？不打仗就是为了中国要人啊，也不是全部老百姓错啊。这些老百姓不对啊。你们把他放了，你们把他放了，你们不要靠他。
China's stance seems to have hardened after last Thursday. After this attack on a goods convoy, rebel drones reportedly set more than 100 trucks on fire. Over $14 million worth of goods were lost. This attack took place near the town of Muse. It's a major trading hub, one of the key points of land trade between China and Myanmar. The border gate that the convoy had crossed is now under rebel control. That could have been another trigger for China's hardened position. Muse is important for trade, but it also has a deeper significance. It's going to be a key transit point for China's Belt and Road Initiative. Beijing has grand ambitions under its China-Myanmar economic corridor. It wants to connect its southern Yunnan province to the Bay of Bengal. And this will be via a $1 billion railway line, and that railway line is set to pass through Muse. So the town is critical to Beijing's schemes. The convoy attack and the fall of the border gate would have sent alarm bells ringing. The Chinese border drills are one response. Another is a naval threat. 3 Chinese warships have docked in Myanmar's southern city of Yangon: a destroyer, a frigate, and a supply ship. 700 Chinese sailors arrived on these vessels yesterday. This naval task force is reportedly in Yangon for drills, joint drills with Myanmar's navy. But is that the only reason? The city of Yangon has just seen junta-sanctioned protests directed at the Chinese. The pro-junta demonstrators accused China of supplying drones and weapons to the rebel groups, drones similar to the ones used to destroy the convoy near Muse. This protest was seen as Myanmar's junta lashing out at Beijing, complaining about what looks like China's double game. After this rare act of defiance, Beijing has sent its warships to Yangon. It's another show of force. It seems China is using intimidation tactics on both sides of Myanmar's border, threatening both the junta and the rebels. It seems to want both factions to toe its line and eventually profit from the chaos in Myanmar. Now let's shift our attention to Sierra Leone. On Sunday, the country's capital woke up to gunshots. Armed men tried to attack a military base. Then they stormed the country's prisons. Several inmates escaped in the process. The army arrived. There were deadly clashes and even some exchange of fire. 20 people were killed, including army troops. Calm has been restored for now, but no one knows who these men were, what was their objective, and why did they attack the military's barracks. Our next report looks into Sierra Leone's Sunday mutiny.
This is Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, a country in West Africa. On Sunday, the city was fast asleep until they heard gunshots. The West African nation was thrown into panic. This was an attack on their safety and security. Gunmen first tried to break into an armory at a military base. This was near the president's house. Then they attacked 2 of the main prisons. Nearly 2,000 prisoners escaped. Soon, security forces flooded the streets. A curfew was announced. There were clashes, gun battles. 20 people were killed. Sierra Leone had never seen this before.
The fire will take place.
Some of us have never experienced this until yesterday. We are praying for this not to repeat because this country belongs to all of us. If this continues, where are we supposed to go? Because we will not have this kind of peace in another man's country.
This is my first time to experience the sound of a gun. To be honest, I was scared and I even hid under the bed. I thought this was the end of me. I swear, I was scared.
24 hours later, calm has finally been restored. The government says it has repelled the attack. It says it is in control. The blame is on renegade soldiers. Soldiers that were not loyal to the government. Some arrests have been made.
In the early hours of this morning, there was a breach of security at the military barracks at Wilberforce in Freetown. Some individuals attacked the military armory and other locations in Freetown, including Pademba Road Correctional Center. In the event, prisoners escaped. The attackers have been repelled by a combined team of gallant security forces, and calm has been restored. Most of the leaders have been arrested. Security operations and investigations are ongoing. We will ensure that those responsible are held accountable through due process.
But there is still no indication on who exactly was responsible and why this attack happened in the first place. So who was behind this mutiny? Was it just disgruntled soldiers, or are there some bigger issues at play? Sierra Leone is grappling with inflation. The inflation rate is 50% in the country. There is a lot of discontent, especially within the police and military. In June, President Julius Maada Bio was elected again. This is his second term. But it wasn't a roaring victory. He barely avoided a runoff. The opposition even questioned the results. They boycotted the polls, and it was only resolved after the regional bloc ECOWAS intervened. Which brings us to West Africa. The region has seen a series of coups. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger and Guinea. Regimes have fallen, the military has taken over. In fact, Sierra Leone's president himself led a coup in the 1990s, so this is not new to him. For now, it looks like there's calm in Sierra Leone. The president says he has things under control, but the economy is still in the dumps, and there is quiet rebellion among the ranks. Will the so-called rebels hit back again? It is likely unless the issues are addressed.
Mount Fuji, matcha tea and manga. This is not a futile exercise in alliteration, but a near-conclusive list of the three great loves of Japan. Today we'll talk about the last bit, manga. It refers to comics originating in Japan. It's been a huge hit in its home country for decades. Last year, sales topped over $5 billion. At this point, manga is spearheading Japan's economic growth. But that's not all. Now it is also part of their government. In a Japanese prefecture, a manga character has turned vice governor. Our next report tells you why.
In Japan, nothing beats the appeal of a youthful, successful businessman, someone who represents the new generation and controls the reins of a corporate. Let's give you a better idea. If Japan had a James Bond, his 007 would be swapped with an MBA degree. No one represents this better than Kosaku Shima. He rose from a lowly salaryman to a lofty conglomerate president. He's handsome, loyal, modest, and hardworking. Sounds like the perfect catch, right? Well, that's because he is a fictional character. A hugely popular manga or Japanese comic book character written by Kenshi Hirokane since 1983. But now Shima is so much more. He's the new vice governor of a Japanese prefecture. Well, we're only half kidding. The manga character is now a mock vice governor of Japan's Saga prefecture. The Saga government is using the popular character to draw attention to its policies, with animations of Shima talking about the prefecture's policies on sports and the semiconductor industry. Manga is often used by governments to put a point across, though not all points make it through unharmed. In the 2016 G7 summit in Japan, the meeting's official mascot was a manga character, Aoshima Meg. It depicted pearl diving women. This drew global intrigue, but locals were offended. They deemed the mascot sexist. So the reaction can go either way, but this only proves that manga is one of Japan's greatest love affairs. It's been huge in the country for decades, but in the past few years, manga sales have also been exploding the world over. In 2012, about 430,000 copies of manga titles were sold. By 2019, this had more than doubled to over 980,000 copies. But last year, close to 2 million manga was sold. In 2022, global sales topped $5.05 billion. This has been made possible due to two reasons. Manga has exploded the world over, especially in the US, where between 2020 and 2021, sales grew by 171%. Secondly, manga has been quick to adapt. Its print format is shrinking. In 1995, sales of print manga accounted for $2.2 billion. Last year, they fell to $1.6 billion. But over time, manga has delivered e-comics which people can read on mobile phones or laptops, and sales of digital manga have risen steadily, with a solid 8.9% growth in 2022 compared to the year before. The numbers are staggering. Even with diverse content at the world's fingertips, the ghouls and demon slayers of mangas are here to stay.
Now let's turn from comic book officials to comical ones. A diplomatic spat has erupted between the UK and Greece. The two European and NATO partners are having a tiff. This is over Britain's colourful history of robbery. The UK has stolen priceless artefacts from all over the world, and it stores these treasures in the British Museum in London. The UK hoards thousands of looted pieces of cultural heritage, many from Asia and Africa. But even Europe has not been spared. Greece in particular has suffered greatly from Britain's kleptomania. And one set of sculptures has been causing tensions for years now. The Parthenon marbles. These marble sculptures are 2,500 years old. They were carved in ancient Greece. They once adorned the Acropolis of Athens. But in the early 1800s, they were stolen by Thomas Bruce, the Earl of Elgin. Even today, Britain calls them the Elgin marbles, as though flaunting its grand robbery. But Greece is not amused, and for years they have been trying to get the marbles back. It seems these efforts have drawn the ire of British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. He was supposed to have a meeting today with Greece's Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He was in London, the Greek leader. The meeting was scheduled, but at the 11th hour, Sunak backed out. The Greek Prime Minister gave an interview on Monday. He spoke about the marbles and he made some logical points. You see, the marbles have been split. Some are in London, some are still in Athens. The Greek Prime Minister compared it to the Mona Lisa being cut in half. He said to truly appreciate their beauty, the marbles needed to be together in one place. Now, the Greek PM was being too optimistic. He knows how the British are about their stolen hoard. They will not return anything willingly. There's even a law from 1963 that forbids the British Museum from returning any stolen artifact. And the Greek Prime Minister knew this. So he was pitching for a partnership, one where the British Museum could loan out the marbles to the Greeks. It's ridiculous that people have to borrow what is technically their heritage, but this is the British Museum we're talking about, so ridiculous is the norm. But even this watered-down suggestion apparently offended Rishi Sunak. He scrapped the meeting with the Greek PM, leading to today's spat. London offered to send Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden for the meeting instead, but the damage had been done.
We offered a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, so a very senior level meeting. The Greek government chose not to take that up. They're entitled to take that view, and the Prime Minister set out clearly the government's position about the Elgin marble. So I think the position is very clear.
It's not just the Greek Prime Minister who was offended by all of this. The people of Greece were not impressed either.
It was a misstep, a diplomatic misstep on behalf of Britain. You discuss things even if you have an opposing opinion.
Sadly, these things do happen. Britain has always refused to do the right thing when it comes to stolen artifacts. India's Kohinoor diamond, the Benin bronzes, and a hoard of other treasures are locked away in London. Britain refuses to even talk about returning these pieces of heritage. The Greek PM called this out. He said, anyone who believes in the correctness and justice of their positions is never afraid of opposing arguments. Britain's refusal to engage is proof of its tainted legacy of looting. For our last story tonight, let me ask you a question. If I told you there was a museum dedicated to Cristiano Ronaldo, where would you think it is being built? Of course, the first guess would be Portugal. It's his birthplace after all. And yes, Portugal does have a Ronaldo museum, but it's not the only one anymore. There is a new Ronaldo museum in the world, and it has opened up in Saudi Arabia, the country that he plays for. It offers a peek into the football superstar's life with a unique collection of personal memorabilia. Our next report tells you more.
In 2023, Saudi Arabia pulled off one of the greatest heists in football transfer history. They signed Cristiano Ronaldo. He joined Saudi Arabia's Al Nassr. It was a contract worth $200 million and one that put the spotlight on the Saudi Football League. Riyadh wants to become synonymous with Ronaldo, and what better way than a museum in his honor? If you're a Ronaldo fan, this is a place you have to visit. From personal memorabilia, including match-worn jerseys, prizes, and iconic footwear, to his iconic career, the museum gives us a glimpse into Ronaldo's life. Various interactive exhibits display his illustrious career, his wins, the numerous clubs he's played for, iconic matches, memorable goals, and much more. But even this museum is causing some stir. The reason for that is a Ronaldo statue. Fans say it's inaccurate, it doesn't match his hair, and also drew comparisons with other football players. This isn't the first Ronaldo statue to create controversy. Remember this one? This bronze bust of Ronaldo broke the internet. It was in Portugal's Madeira. People slammed the bulging eyes and toothy grin. They said it was nothing like Ronaldo. Looks like statues and Ronaldo don't have a dream run. But football in Saudi Arabia seem to be having one. This Ronaldo Museum is part of the Riyadh Season, an annual state-funded entertainment and sports festival. It's to attract visitors from across the globe, and Saudi Arabia wants just that. The kingdom is moving to diversify its sources of income, but time is of the essence here. OPEC has projected global oil consumption will peak around 2040, so Saudi Arabia is up against the clock. They're moving away from oil, and one of the biggest investments is sports. From football to Formula One and even golf, the goal is simple: reshape the economy before oil revenues decline.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In China, a penguin parade was the center of attention as they waddled with bags through tourists. In Indonesia, a critically endangered Sumatran rhino was born in a national park. And the White House lights up for Christmas as the Bidens unveil holiday decorations. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1943, Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin met in Tehran. This was during the Second World War. The meeting was a secret one and was codenamed Eureka. This was the first time the three Allied leaders came face to face. The goal was to decide on war strategy and also what a post-war world would look like. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.